one of our program officers, as well as by Matt Russell. So today we are going to talk a bit about the nuts and bolts of the review process. We're so excited to have you all volunteering your time to review grant applications for us for this upcoming cycle. As you all already know, we've received nearly 300 submissions, so certainly our team would not be able to read all of those applications on our own, so you all play a really critical role in this process. So before we hop into today's presentation, just a few quick housekeeping things. So in terms of asking questions, please use the chat box that's found probably on the left-hand side or right-hand side of your screen. What we'll do is we'll be answering questions throughout via that chat box, but then also there is going to be time at the end of the call in which we will kind of answer questions via the line or live or in audio. You all should have received PDFs of today's presentation, as well as critical attachments, so the reference materials. What I'll do is I'll also make sure to send them again after this call in case you did not receive that email. Today's webinar, as you heard by the message that played in the beginning, is being recorded, so you will be able to access it for reference later. And then we encourage everybody to take the survey after the webinar. It's really helpful for us for future cycles so that we can make sure to kind of tweak and make our trainings better each year. So today's agenda, we're going to go through a little bit of the background on the Farm to School program, kind of talk a little bit about funding, priorities, eligible entities for the grant program, as well as the grant types. So basically this is going to be a little bit of a refresher from yesterday's presentation. And then we'll hop into an overview of the grant cycle. So just give everybody a little bit of a flavor of what to expect during the review cycle, and then kind of what happens after the review cycle, after you all have completed your piece in the puzzle, what we then do with all of the scores and feedback that you've submitted to us in terms of deciding who we will grant funding to. Then after that, we're going to deep dive into the review process, really get into the nitty-gritty of kind of how are you doing scoring, what are the materials that you will be using to score applications, what's expected of you during each part of the review cycle. So we'll kind of get a little deeper there. And then we wanted to provide you all with tips for success for the review cycle. So kind of just highlighting ways to set yourself up for success so that the review cycle can run as smoothly as possible. And then by that time, you all would have received a ton of information. So we want to recap for you kind of your immediate next steps. And then as I mentioned before, we'll have a little bit of time for questions. Okay, so we're going to hop into the background and talk a little bit about the Farm to School program. So the main purpose of the Farm to School program is really to increase access to local foods. So we want to make sure that we are helping eligible schools offer more local items on their menus, and also providing food education opportunities to students so that they can really be able to consume different types of locally fresh grown foods. So the Farm to School program was authorized in the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010. So in Section 243, that authorizing language gave us the authority to provide competitive grants annually up to $5 million to really foster farm-to-school activities in key areas. So training, supporting operations, planning, purchasing equipment, developing school gardens, and really strengthening and deepening partnerships that would allow for schools to really do more farm-to-school activities. So a lot of the priorities that really guide the work that is done by the Farm to School program are also outlined in the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. So a couple of them that I just wanted to highlight today is that we really want to make sure that we make local food products available on the menu of eligible schools. We want to make sure that we're reaching schools that are serving a high number of free or reduced price students. We also want to make sure that we're incorporating experiential nutrition education activities that really help to get kids exposed to fresh fruits and vegetables that they may not have tried before. We really want to make sure that our efforts are impactful and that we are evaluating how effective these activities are. We also want to make sure that we're demonstrating the potential for long-term program sustainability of farm-to-school work. So in terms of the priorities that are kind of guiding the Farm-to-School grant program for this fiscal year, are outlined here on this slide. So we want to make sure to include a focus on innovative procurement strategies. We also want to make sure that we are increasing access to regional and local foods in school-based child and adult care food program projects that are serving pre-K settings, as well as school-based summer food service programs and those schools or entities that are operating the seamless summer option. We want to make sure to keep a special eye out for projects that are going to be touching more than one school so that we can have as much reach as possible. Then also for this fiscal year, we were really looking to try to see if we could grant to applications that have been submitted by state agencies. Over the past few years, we have found that we haven't actually awarded any funding to as many state agencies as we would like to. So we want to keep a special eye out for those entities in this round of applications. So really quickly, we wanted to go through what are those eligible entities for the Farm to School grant program. So eligible schools, that would be school food authorities that are pre-K through 12 that are operating the school breakfast program or the National School Lunch Program or the Child and Adult Care Food Program, the Seamless Summer Option, or the Summer Food Service Program. Also state and local agencies, Indian tribal organizations, agricultural producers, and nonprofit entities are also eligible to apply for funding. In terms of grant types, as we had shared on yesterday's webinar, there are 4 different grant types that entities are able to apply to. So the first is the support service grant. And I should also say that each of these grant types actually have a different amount of funding that is available to them. So support service grants really help to develop and provide broad-reaching support for farm-to-school projects. Nonprofits and state agencies are able to apply to this grant type. But this particular funding level is between $65,000 and $100,000. We also have implementation and planning grants. So implementation grants really help to kind of give schools the resources they need to execute on their farm-to-school activities. Planning grants really help schools to structure plans that really incorporate best practices for launching or cultivating farm-to-school activities. And then the final one, training grants, it really supports training that can provide TA for local procurement, food safety, culinary education, and much more. And those training grants are available for folks hosting at the state, regional, or national level. And as you can see there, the granting funding is from $15,000 to $50,000. So we're going to hop into the grant cycle overview. So what does the grant cycle kind of look like from A to Z? So for those of you who have participated in the review cycle in previous years, you may have noticed that we shifted our grant cycle for fiscal year 2017 a little bit. So this time around, we announced our request for application, RFA, in September. Applications were due in December 8th. And then in January, we will be distributing applications to you all, the reviewers. We're actually aiming to do that by the end of this week. And then February through April, that's when we are calculating the scores and preparing a recommendation list for the selection official. And then finally, in May, that's where we announce our grantees who have been awarded. So just a quick high-level overview of the review process, and we will dive deeper into this in a little bit, but each reviewer is assigned to a 3-person team, and each 3-person team has a team lead, and each team is assigned a specific grant type. So by this time, every person should know what team they're assigned to. You're either on team 1 through team 30, and you should have a specific grant type that you've been assigned. Some of you have been assigned as backup reviewers. We tend to have a few people that are unable to fulfill their commitment as reviewers. So if someone drops out, you will receive an email from me kind of giving you your specific team assignment and grant type. If you have not received that particular email, just shoot the Farm to School inbox a message, and I can make sure to get that sent out to you again. So this time around, the review period is from January 23rd through February 17th. This time around, we structured it a little bit more tightly. So the first half of the review period, you will be independently reviewing and scoring each of your assigned applications. And then during the second phase of the review period, which is February 6th through 17th, that's when you'll have your team calls to discuss your scores and strengths and weaknesses of each of the applications. And if based on those applications, based on those discussions, you can then adjust your score and resubmit them. The timing for those calls will be done by the team lead. So all scores and feedback are submitted using Partner Web, which is an online platform, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So what happens after your part is done? So after that review cycle from January 23rd to the 17th, what happens with the scores? So that's when our team moves into the selection process. So we use a couple of different criteria to determine which of the applications will make the recommendation list that we submit to the selection official. So some of that criteria is scores and written feedback, which is what you all provide to us. Then also we'll take a look at geographic diversity, as well as departmental priorities. And some of those priorities that I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, does it reach more than one school? Is it an innovative procurement strategy, et cetera? So in terms of kind of like the initial thing that we do when we're trying to prepare the list is that we'll take all of those scores that you submitted to us, and we'll sort them by rank order, highest to lowest, by each of the grant types. We'll determine a cutoff score, and all of the scores above that particular cutoff will be determined to be a high-scoring application. Then we'll take a look and see that we're making sure that we are meeting the geographic diversity, departmental priorities, and fiscal year 27 priorities for the application. Then we prepare a recommendation list that we send off to a selection official, kind of indicating which applications we think should be awarded. The selection official reviews that list, may ask for some additional information, may ask for some additional proposals, but kind of after that back and forth, we then have a finalized list that has been approved by the selection official. We then will vet those particular grants and essentially just make sure that they are kind of good grantees across the department. There's no federal debt, things of that nature. And then what we do is we have our final list, and we're able to make our announcement in May regarding who has won funding. So now that brings us to our deep dive of the review process. So now we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of kind of the role that you all will be playing in helping us to select our winning grantees. So here is a list of the responsibilities for you as a reviewer. So the first thing is submitting the conflict of interest form, which many of you have already done. You know, you may be wondering, how many proposals am I going to be reviewing? And so that's really going to vary by team, but you can expect around 10 proposals. Then the next key step for a reviewer is to submit their scores and their feedback, so those written comments on strengths and weaknesses. And then you're going to participate in a team review meeting. So you've individually looked at your applications, you've scored them, you've written feedback. Now you're meeting with your team to discuss those scorings that you've done. After that conversation, if applicable, if your scores have changed or your feedback has changed, you then would update your scores and your feedback. And then finally, we would ask that you complete the reviewer feedback survey, which is just helpful for us so that we know for future cycles what worked during the review cycle, what didn't work so well during the review cycle, and we're able to kind of tweak the way that we organize the reviewer activities. So let's dive into the conflict of interest form, which most of you have already submitted to me. Thank you, thank you. So just really quickly, in general, there's a conflict of interest if you have a final investment in one of the organizations or entities that are applying or that would potentially benefit from the grant. You also have a conflict of interest if you previously worked for an organization associated with the grant or would be benefiting from the grant, or you sit on a board. Anything of that nature that would kind of cloud your ability to objectively review these applications, that would count as a conflict of interest. So since most of you have already submitted your conflict of interest forms, but maybe didn't think quite as thoroughly through some of the relationships that you may have, you can feel free to contact me at Farm to School, at the Farm to School inbox, just to share maybe any potential conflicts of interest you may have. I mean, you definitely do not have to list all the people that you worked for. That would be onerous, but more of if you have extensive relationships in your state as it relates to procurement or farm to school activities, it'd be great to just flag that for us so we can avoid giving you an application from that particular state or region. So how can you be preparing for your review? So as I mentioned, the review cycle starts on January 23rd, so that is in fact this coming Monday. Some things you could be doing this week to get prepared is that you can review the request for application, which I have sent out to everyone. It's a pretty thick, long document. The expectation is not for you to read it from end to end, but more power to you if you do. But certainly just to kind of get familiar with the different sections so that you can reference it as you're reading your applications. Should you have any questions on kind of the intent of a particular grant type or the necessary pieces that should be included in that particular proposal. And then I just saw a question come through from Bonnie on the conflict of interest piece. No, it would not be a conflict of interest if you wanted to send the application for someone to apply, but the application is not available yet for fiscal year 18. So instead, you could just encourage people to sign up for the DIRT, which is the Farm to School Program's e-newsletter. And we'll make announcements on when the next RFA will be available. So getting back to preparing for the review, the next thing you're going to want to do is access PartnerWeb to get familiar with the system. Do not panic. You have not received your PartnerWeb information just as yet. As I mentioned, it is an online platform website where you will go to submit your feedback and your scores. We are in the process of getting everyone uploaded into PartnerWeb, so by the end of this week, you should receive your PartnerWeb credentials. We advise that you log into PartnerWeb as soon as you get those credentials, just in case you are experiencing any hiccups, so that we can troubleshoot for you as soon as possible. The next thing that we'd suggest for folks to do this week, which you can do right away because I've sent these materials out earlier today, is to familiarize yourself with the reference materials, which would be the score sheet. So there is a score sheet for each of the grant types. So you'll want to take a look at the score sheet for the grant type for which you've been assigned to, and then also take a look at the point allocation guidance, which kind of just outlines descriptions on the different categories of how to assign points when scoring your application. And we will get into these two documents right now. So in terms of the reference materials, the score sheet is, as I mentioned, unique to each grant type. So there's a score sheet for planning, training, support service, all four. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're using the score sheet for your particular grant type. So what you'll see on your score sheet is that there are going to be categories, and each of the categories have a specific number of points assigned to them. And under each of the categories, you're going to see major bullets for what should be covered or what you're looking for when you're reviewing each of the proposals. As you can see, what's blown out here to the right is that there are kind of like excellent, very good, good, fair, poor, unresponsive. So these different levels for which you can assign points. So you're going to want to be using your score sheet as you are going through your proposals. That blank square to the right is where you can write your comments. And again, we believe that you should be filling out one of these as you're going through each of your proposals, so it's really easy for you to upload all of that information into PartnerWeb. The next important reference material is the point allocation guidance. So as you saw before, the ratings are excellent, very good, good, fair, poor, and unresponsive. And so we provided you with some guiding statements to really describe kind of what we mean by each of these different ratings. So, you know, the point of the scoring sheet as well as the point allocation guidance is to make sure that we're maintaining scoring consistency, not just within teams, but also across teams. We want to make sure that each of the applications throughout the whole entire process are being held up to the same standard. And by using these ratings, it really gives everyone in a team and across teams a specific language that they can all be referencing and using when talking about each of these applications. So the activity checklist, I just wanted to highlight for reviewers, but you all do not have to fill out this particular form. This form is only to be filled out by the team leads, but you may see it among the materials that will be available on PartnerWeb, so you can disregard. But in case you're curious to know what the activity checklist is, it actually helps USDA understand grantee needs, but it does not impact selections or scoring. So essentially, team leads will fill out an activity checklist for each of the grant applications, and it'll kind of just give us a sense of, in each of these applications, these are the different things that were mentioned as a need in that particular proposal or project. So now let's deep dive into the review period. So as I had mentioned, the review period goes from January 23rd through February 17th, but it's split into two phases. And the first phase is the independent review, which is from January 23rd through February 3rd. So definitely mark your calendars with those dates. During this time, reviewers should be independently evaluating each of their assigned applications using the score sheet and the point allocation guidance documents that I just went through. The applications, as I had mentioned, haven't been distributed yet, but you will get them by the end of this week. It will be distributed to you via Watchdocs, and you will receive an email with a link that will then allow you to access all of the applications that you should be reviewing. We request that reviewers take the time as soon as they receive that Watchdocs email to just scan the application to see if there are any conflicts of interest. And if there are, you go ahead and send an email to the Farm to School inbox so that we can swap out that application with one that doesn't pose a conflict of interest. Also, we are asking folks to just take a look at applications to make sure that there isn't anything weird, that there aren't any things missing. We've already done a first sweep for completeness, but it is possible that some applications may not have all of the different sections. So if you can just take a look to make sure that there isn't anything odd or weird with the applications that have been assigned to you, that would be good. We are asking folks to do this quick scan of their applications by January 24th, end of day, just because we don't want folks to start reading an application that's going to get swapped out of your group if someone has a conflict of interest. So if folks can take a look as soon as possible, that will just help to keep things running as smoothly as possible. Some other things to keep in mind during the independent review phase, you're going to want to make sure that you read all of the application materials, including the narrative, the budget narrative, and all of the supporting documents that are associated with each of your applications. During this time, we call it independent review for a reason. You are looking at all of these applications on your own. You are not discussing it with a buddy or any of your team members. This is your solo time to take a look at these applications. Please be sure to complete your independent review by the end of the independent review period. That is critical because when you go into your team meeting, you should have scored and written strengths and weaknesses for each of your applications. So scoring applications, you want to make sure that you provide a score and written feedback. So that written feedback is not optional. We're asking you to record your comments in the forms of strengths and weaknesses. You want to make sure that your score and your comments align. If you say it's excellent, make sure that you're pointing out all of the strengths of that particular application, that you don't have any weaknesses. for that particular section. You're going to want to make sure that you use your reference material. So please use your point allocation guide and your scoring sheet. And then for the budget section, which I have to update this slide, there are points assigned to the budget section, so you're going to want to make sure that you provide comments and that you provide a score. I will make sure to resend out the slides with that update. So again, as I said before, you'll be submitting your comments and your scores using PartnerWeb. So the team review guidelines. So you've completed your independent review. Now you're in your team review period, which is from February 6th to the 17th. During this time, your team lead is going to facilitate a group discussion via conference call. At the beginning of your call, a program representative, myself, or one of the grant officers will join your call to kind of just give you a sense of how the process will go. So during your call, what will happen, you will discuss each of your proposals, kind of do a round robin, if you will. You will provide the score that you gave to that particular application and then discuss the strengths and weaknesses. Based on the discussion that your team has, you may or may not choose to adjust your individual scores. If your scores and your comments do change for a particular application, we ask that you update those scores in PartnerWeb. You will submit your scores and feedback, as I mentioned, using PartnerWeb, which we wanted to make sure to take a little bit of time to walk you through the PartnerWeb interface. So at this time, I'm going to kick it over to Matt, and Matt is going to walk us through PartnerWeb. So Matt, you could unmute yourself using *7.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. And hi, everybody. Thanks again for joining our review webinar today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time walking us through the partner website. So I'm going to switch over here to share so we can take a look at PartnerWeb. And Maika, how does that look?
Right now, I have a gray screen. Oh, it's loading. There we go.
Yeah,
we
great.
can see it.
Okay. So as Maika mentioned, all the scores and their individual reviews will be submitted in PartnerWeb, and this is the PartnerWeb home screen. We've had a few questions come up on the question tab about folks that already have PartnerWeb access and folks that do not have access currently to PartnerWeb. If you currently have a PartnerWeb account, we will update it so that you will have access to this site. If you don't have a PartnerWeb account, we will create one for you. You will get an email, and you will log in, and you will be able to access the Farmer School grants. And so you get your username, you get your password, everyone gets logged in, and this is the first thing you'll see in PartnerWeb. This is the home screen. Everything navigates from this page. It's also a place where we have some basic information about the process and resources for you throughout that you can use throughout the process. So for example,
hey there, Matt.
Yes.
Folks are having trouble hearing you. You're a little bit low. Can you get in a little closer to your speaker?
I'll try. How does that sound? Does that sound a little bit better?
Tiny bit, but use your outside voice.
How about this? I'll move the microphone very, very close.
Fantastic.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Yes, that's perfect.
Great. So like I was saying, this is the home screen that you'll come to when you log in, and it has basic information up here at the top. It has the Farmer School contact phone number and email. It describes what you'll find on this website. You'll find your application assignments, your panelist ID and team number, and this is where you'll submit your score sheets. It's got a few reminders about key dates, and then also down here it's important to note that we have references and resources. So if you're having some technical issues with PartnerWeb, here's their phone number and their email. We have a copy of the RFA. a link to our website, and other resources such as copies of the slides and the presentations. So this is the home screen. You can always return to this. So let's take the first step. So you want to know what your assignments are. You can see across the top we have links here. We need to do a little bit of updating yet to make these the 2017 tabs, but you'll get the idea. So you see your assignments, planning score sheets, implementation, and so on going across the top. The same navigation is down the side. It works better for some folks to look across the top and on the side, so we have both of those options there. So the first thing you want to do is you'll want to come in and you'll want to find your assignment. So you come up here and click on your assignments on the top, or step 1 on the side. So click here, and it's pretty straightforward. Here we have a list of all the panelists for 2017. So you can come in here, and your panelist ID is your first name and the first letter of your last name. And it tells you what team you're on. So for example, Abby B is on team 1, and she is not a team lead. Alicia L, team 13, not a team lead. So you can always come back here if you need a reminder of your team assignments. So then you know what your team number is. Then you can come over here to the right column, table 2, where it says find applications assigned to your team. We're going to stick with team 1 with Abby, so we'll come in here and we'll click on this little plus sign, click on it, and here we go. Again, it's pretty straightforward. We see here that these are the 9 applications assigned to team 1. And this information is the actual information in this site right now will be updated, so no need to get concerned about what you see here right now as far as the actual applications. But this is an example. So team 1 has 9 applications, support service, the grant ID is S001, and then the application name is Farm to Fork. And so you would just scroll down here and find your team and open up any given team number, and there is your list of applications. Okay, so now you know your panelist ID, you know your team, you've received your applications via email through Watchdocs, you've read through your applications, and now you're ready to start doing your review. So you come up here to the top and you would click, so we're going to go through an example of a planning score sheet. So you are assigned planning grants and you're ready to go. So you come up here and click on planning score sheet FY17. And I encourage everybody to get in here early. You can click around. There's not much you can do wrong in it. It's pretty safe, so come in here, click around, and get comfortable with the system. So you'll click on here for planning score sheets, and we have some more references for you and some more resources. We have those guidelines for assigning numeric scores. You can click on there, and they're always available to you for download. You can go down here for a printable copy of the score sheet. I recommend everybody print this off, either the one that emailed you, but this will be the same here because it's easy to take notes in those printable score sheets. And then the activity checklist as well. Okay, so you know your resources, and now you're ready to do a planning application. You'll see over here to the right that we have the add a score sheet planning. So it's this large hyperlink on the right. So you would click on that, and here it is, an electronic version, a web-based version of those paper score sheets. So now it's pretty straightforward. It's click and go. So you would start with your panelist ID, and I'm going to work through one so everyone can see what it looks like from start to finish. You would pick your team. Abby was on team 1. You would pick your application ID. So Abby's going to do P001. And then you would type in the name of the planning grant. So planning grant example. So now we would work through the application. Again, this tracks exactly with the paper version. So experience and background is worth 20 points. It breaks it down here, excellent, very good, good, fair. Again, the idea with this guidance is that there will be more consistency within your team and across teams. So I'm going to go through and make an assessment. This particular planning grant was very good, somewhere between excellent and very good, so I would give them a 17. And strengths, I'm not going to take the time to type them all out because that would slow us down, but I will note here that the reason I'm putting something in here is because there is a little red asterisk next to this section. If they're next to the title over here on the left-hand column, if there is a red asterisk, it means that information is required for you to save and move forward. So I'm going to put them in here. That I put some example weaknesses. And we'll come down to need and readiness, based on the criteria here that's laid out, same as the score sheet, you would enter your score. So again, I'm just going to move through this relatively quickly so that you can get a sense of how the system flows. So I would put my strengths and weaknesses in for that section, come down here to the next section, objectives, activities, and timelines, put in a score, and then I would support that score with my example narratives, the strengths and the weaknesses, and I would keep moving down into the next section. So once you move through all the different sections for this particular grant, supporting your score along the way with strengths and weaknesses, you'll finally get down to the bottom. And you've put your final score in, final two scores. You've got your sustainability, and you support your score there with strengths and weaknesses, and then you get your budget, which again, Mike noted that there are points allocated this year to the budget. A little bit of a change from last year. And then you have finished your independent review. So you can come down here, and you'll see here that there is another box down, a narrative box here that you can note. If you want to make any, we ask that you explain any of the significant changes that came about during the team review. This allows you to make those explanations here if you change a score during your team review. So I'm all done. I come down to the bottom and I hit OK. So what will happen then is it'll take you actually back to this screen, and you'll see here now under My Score Sheets, it keeps track of them all for you. So you can go in here and it says Application 001, Planning Grant Example. They got a score of 71 in Abby B. These would just be Abby's. So this is a way for you to keep track of all of your scores, your individual scores. You could always come back in and edit them simply by clicking on the edit icon along the way on the left-hand side, at which point you can come in, make your changes, come down here, hit OK, and hit Save. So again, this program, particular platform is in its third year. We've worked through a lot of the kinks. It's pretty straightforward and user-friendly, but we strongly encourage you to, if you get in here and click around, and if you have any questions, just reach out, and we're available to help you with the system. But if you're having technical issues, Partner Web Help Desk is available to help you getting the system downloaded or making sure that it works correctly on your computer. So with that note, I'm going to pass it back over to Maika, and we'll keep moving along.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. So we're just going to wait for the presentation slides to reappear. All right, here we go. So we are now going to move into Tips for Success, which Anna Arrowsmith is going to go through these slides for us.
All right. Thanks, Maika. Hi, everybody. I'm Anna Arrowsmith, and I'm one of the grants officers for the Farm to School grants. So I'm just going to go through some of the tips for success, first being doing your point allocations. So as Maika mentioned earlier, there is a guidance sheet that can help with your point allocation, and as she already mentioned, it defines what is excellent, what's very good, fair, poor, and unresponsive. The different criteria on the guidance sheet have different ranges for allocable points. So for some criteria, top score would be 25, whereas others have a top score of 10. So you really want to be sure that you refer back to that guidance sheet as you're reviewing your applications and assigning points. And then any number within the score range can be used, for example, 3, 9, 23, sort of the oddball numbers. You don't have to use the exact numbers that are on the guidance sheet. So for example, I'm using the guidance for the implementation grants as an example. Excellent is 25 points. Very good is 20 points, and it goes all the way down to 0 for unresponsive. But let's say you're reviewing an application, and for that criteria, they're better than very good, but they're not perfectly excellent. So you might want to give them 22 or 23 points. It doesn't have to be those concrete numbers. And then you want to be sure that your scores track with your feedback. So if you give a fair score, so again for the implementation, 10 points, actually on the slide it's 8 points, it's fair. You don't want to follow up with comments saying how wonderful they are. You know, you want the two to jive with each other, which actually brings me to the next slide, which is written feedback. Written comments are really important. There's a couple of reasons why we need feedback beyond just your numbered scores. When we go to the selecting official, we need to be able to say why any given application is recommended for funding. We can't just say that they scored the highest. We need to be able to address the specific strengths of the application. Or weaknesses, if that selecting official wants to know why we did not award any particular application. And then another reason that we want your written feedback is for debriefs. Any applicants who are not selected for award are offered the opportunity for a debrief, which outlines the strengths and weaknesses of their application. And I feel really strongly that it benefits all parties involved, whether it is FNS, the applicants, and you as a future reviewer. If you come back and do it again for us in a future year, if we can provide thoughtful feedback to these applicants, then they're going to have more resources for the next time they write an application. And as someone who has read more applications than I can count, it's very frustrating to see an applicant making the same mistakes over and over again each time they apply. Or alternately, they may have done something really wonderful in an application that just didn't make the cut, but they might omit it from a future application because they didn't know it was a strength. So you want to really be thorough in your written feedback. And then next slide, some ideal examples of written feedback. So we talked about why it's important, so let's talk about some good and bad examples. As cathartic as it may be to say, crikey, what were these people thinking? That is not something that you want to put in writing in your comments. Feel free to vent in the calls, but for your written comments, they really have to be useful feedback. You know, as I mentioned before, applications that are not funded will be able to see the comments that you make. So you want to write them as if you were comfortable sharing them with an application. So some examples of strengths that are on the slide here. The school district has strong community partners ready to help implement the project. That's one of the things that we're looking for, and we want to know that that is one of their strengths. A good example of a weakness, the budget narrative did not clearly explain all the proposed expenses, particularly the supplies and equipment. You don't want to just say budget narrative was too broad. You want to get more specific in the areas that really caused you to mark them down. And then some less than ideal examples for feedback. So in addition to my earlier crikey comment, there are a few other things that you want to avoid. I have seen all of these. You no longer can simply leave it blank, so that's good. Also, just listing the activities without saying how they impact the score. Garden, vegetables, and classroom activities. Well, that sounds farm to schoolish, but what is it? What are they going to do? That doesn't really say anything for the reviewers, for the selecting official, and for anybody moving forward. Or just simply saying great. We're glad you think it's great, but why is it great? We don't want feedback to be too vague, or it really needs to be helpful. I chuckled when I saw a good example on page 7 because that's something that I used to do when I was reviewing applications. I would put that in my notes to myself so that when I went to enter comments into a score sheet, I knew exactly where to flip for that good example. And then some of the weakness seems like a waste of funds. That's really a matter of opinion, and you will definitely have an opportunity to discuss that during the call, but it's not something that you want to put in the score sheet. And then, the other one about personnel, that may or may not be fine, but that's not enough to justify a good or bad score. And then last one for me is just some key steps for successful review. Once you've received your partner web username and password, just go in and make sure that you can log in. And if you can't log in for whatever reason, zip an email over to the Farm to School mailbox and they can get you straightened out. Please, please, please review your applications for conflict of interest as early as you can. Not only do you want to look at who the applicant is, but you also want to look at who their partners are. You might not have a conflict with the actual applicant, but if they have a key partner working with them on the grant, you want to make sure that you don't have any conflicts with them as well. And again, as soon as possible, so that if we do have to swap out any applications between the teams, we want to do it before any others have started reading their applications. We strongly recommend that you give yourself at least 2 hours per application and spread them out as much as you can across the review period. We don't want you to get totally burnt out and try to plow through them all in the first few days. You really want to complete your independent reviews prior to the team meeting. You need to come to your team meetings ready to talk about the applications and make informed comments and suggestions and be a part of the discussion. And then sort of linked to that, be reliable. You want to be responsive to any scheduling requests and be prompt about notifying your team lead of any conflicts that you may have for the different times. Be open to the opinions of others. During team discussion, you may come to the discussion with some really strong opinions about this or that application, and maybe somebody else has another opinion that is a little bit different. So keep it, an open discussion and be open to thinking, looking at things a different way, possibly. And then when Matt was going through the score sheet online, he showed you towards the bottom of the page, there's a spot where you can change your score if you need to based on the discussion. You really need to support that clearly and revise any strengths and weaknesses in that box so we can justify the change of score. And that's all I've got for you. I'll give it back to Maika.
Thanks, Anna. All right, want to give you all a thumbs up. You've made it this far. We are almost through. So I wanted to just quickly recap next steps. You all have had a lot of information, thrown at you. So if you have it, please sign and submit your conflict of interest form to the Farm to School inbox. Also, what you want to be doing now is reviewing the RSA, just skim it, and definitely taking a look at the reference materials. So look at the score sheet for your assigned grant type. Take a look at the point allocation guidance. By January 24th, you want to make sure you've tried logging into PartnerWeb and also downloaded your apps from Watchdocs just to make sure that that's working. And you also want to make sure that you've scanned your apps for any conflicts of interest and just general completeness. So any issues on any of those fronts, you would contact the Farm to School inbox. By February 3rd, you should have independently reviewed all of your assigned proposals. You should have submitted scores and your comments in the forums of strengths and weaknesses via PartnerWeb. February 6th through the 17th, you're attending your scheduled team meetings or meeting, just depending on what your team has decided on doing in terms of talking collectively. And again, the team lead will be coordinating the timing for those team meetings. And then by February 17th, or whenever, so after you've had your last team meeting, you want to make sure that you've adjusted your scores and comments in Partner Web if your scores have changed. And then by mid-March, we would love for you to complete your reviewer feedback survey just to let us know how we can make the process even more smooth next year. And we probably won't send out that reviewer feedback until after February 17th. Okay, so that is it. We are actually really close to the 2 o'clock point, but I think we've done a really good job of answering questions as we went. Let me take a look and see what questions we have. So how do we define innovative procurement strategies? This is a good one. So unfortunately, it's relative. And it'll be pretty evident in your grant application or proposal. So typically, the applicant will flag that maybe they used to source local food by directly working with farmers, but now this time around with grant funding, they're going to work with distributors or a collection of agricultural producers to procure more local foods for their program. So it's really relative and typically flagged within the application. Someone asked, will the pool of applicants include experienced grantees? So I believe what this person's getting at is, are there people who have received a grant award from us previously reapplying? And yes, that does happen at times. Folks who may have applied for a planning grant, received it, so now they have a complete plan to do farm-to-school activities, and now they're looking to actually execute on it. So perhaps they're applying for an implementation grant. So yes, there could very well be some applicants who are experienced. I do not see any other questions in the question queue. So one question that folks may have is around Partner Web. So if you, at this point, no one has probably received a Partner Web account information. You will receive your Partner Web account information by the end of this week. We're looking to get everybody set up and uploaded there. We have another question. Mary asked, you mentioned changing your personal scores if they have changed for the group score. Are you saying our individual score has to match the group score? So no, your individual score does not have to match the group score. Essentially, the purpose of the team review portion is that in case folks are coming in with a harder perspective or edge or line when reviewing that application, that you could kind of see how other people took a look at that application, perhaps see strengths that you had missed initially, or perhaps you just reviewed that application as your last application, so you were burnt out and were just grading it a little bit more harshly than the others. So it's really an opportunity to just get a gut check on your individual score. You may come out of your team meeting not changing any of your scores. Or alternatively, you may decide that you might have been a bit harsh or not strong enough, and thus change your individual score and the comments associated. So it's 2 o'clock. Please feel free to shoot over any questions that you have to the Farm to School inbox, and I'm happy to answer them there. Also, I'll make sure to capture any of these questions that are here in the chat box and try to email people with answers to them, or put them in the email that I send out to everyone with the updated presentation. But thank you so much for your time. The last thing that I wanted to leave with you about the written feedback is, in addition to all the things that Anna had shared, it's also important to get that written feedback because sometimes applicants who did not receive an award will request the feedback. So you want to make sure you're using proper grammar, and you want to just make sure you're not being critical, but you're being constructive in the feedback that you're providing. All right, you all, I will release you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're excited to have you all reviewing applications come the 23rd. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me via phone or via email. All right, bye-bye.